Welcome back, GED scholars, to another Reasoning Through Language Arts and Social Studies video. And this video is going to cover a writer's point of view and their tone. And we have to remember, folks, that some of these skills that we might use on the Reasoning Through Language Arts exam are the same skills that we'll use on the Social Studies exam. So that means that even if you're just studying for the RLA exam, I want you to pay attention to Social Studies documents that bring up the writer's point of view or their tone. And like I tell all of my students, for the Reasoning Through Language Arts exam, it's really wise to start reading or to continue reading as much as you can, folks. If you're like, I don't have anything to read, if you have a cereal box in your kitchen, you have something to read. And if you're really struggling with finding material to read, you can always go online and you can look up libraries in your neighborhood, or you can look up to see if there are any books that are out there for free. But folks, you want to just make sure that you are reading, because your reading is connected with how you speak and how you write as well. And when you're used to reading, folks, when it comes to these exams, you're not going to be intimidated by all of these text passages that they're sharing with you. So please make sure that you pick up a book, you read, get used to it, make sure that you're paying attention when you're reading so you understand what you're reading. So let's get into this, folks. So we have the writer's point of view on the left and the writer's tone on the right. And believe it or not, folks, your tone, anybody's tone, whether it's verbal or it's written, will be dictated by their point of view on that topic. So the writer's point of view is their perspective on that topic. And with anybody, your perspective is going to share a lot of information. It'll share information about you, what you like or what you dislike, shape your vocabulary. A lot of it comes from your background. A lot of the time, your interests might play a role in your point of view about a topic. For example, if you like to skateboard and the skateboard park down the street from you is closing, you're going to have a special perspective on that topic because you're a skateboarder and you use that park. So your point of view on the fact that it's being closed will be stronger and will be different, obviously, than someone who doesn't skateboard and could really care less about the park. The author's purpose for writing the passage or the article that you read will also dictate their point of view as well. If their purpose is to support the fact that the park is being closed, well, then you know, okay, well, their point of view about it must be something that's negative. So when we read these passages, we want to make sure that we're paying attention to that purpose. We're paying attention to the details they're sharing and the word choice too, because your word choice will always determine that point of view that they have. Because if you have a negative point of view about something, like the example we've been using with the skate park, you're going to use negative words, or you're going to use details that make it look like it's the worst thing ever to have that skate park in that neighborhood. And your point of view will also then dictate your tone. And so if you're like, well, I don't really understand what is a tone if it's not directly stated. Folks, you've heard people talk about tone. You have a tone when you speak. And so if you've ever heard it's not what you said, it's the way you said it, the way you said it, they're talking about your tone. So when we read something, we don't hear the tone, but you can tell, once again, going back to the word choice. If you know who the author is and you know their point of view, you know their background, their perspective on the topic, you know that their tone is either going to be a strong tone for something or it's going to be a strong tone against something. Once again, folks, pay attention to the word choice, because the word choice will tell you right off the bat, what is this tone? If they're cursing up a storm about something, they most likely are very passionate about it, and they could either like it or they could dislike it. So it's not just the word choice alone, but it's how are they using those words? How are they structuring those sentences? So we see two examples of questions as well that you might see on the exam. Which of the following best describes the tone of the piece? Or which of the statements best describes the tone of the author? So you want to pay attention to those things, folks. You want to pay attention to word choice, how the sentence is structured. If you know who the author is, thinking about, okay, well, what is their perspective on this topic? This is really going to help you out, folks, when it comes to the extended writing response, which is the essay you're going to have to write for the RLA exam. And so on the screen, I'm sharing with you a prompt. And so what will happen is they'll give you two passages, and the passages will be about the same topic. So this passage one, it reads, "Are tweens ready for cell phones?" And so we have the first passage that you would read about it, and this is going to be from somebody's point of view. So we read right here, it's by this person, Deborah Pendergast, and I don't know who that is, so I can't really decide right off the bat what her point of view is going to be. So that's why I need to read the information and pay attention to the point of view that she has, and I'll know that based on the tone she uses, and that's going to come through with the words. Then when I come to the second passage, I also look at the author, Linda Seidner. I don't know who that is, so the only way I'm going to be able to know what that point of view is by reading the passage. And what do I need to do, folks? I need to pay attention to their word choice because that will help with that tone. And if you're like, well, why does that matter when it comes to the extended writing response? Well, folks, your prompt is going to ask you to basically read these two passages, and then you have to decide which one has a stronger position, like which one has a position that's better supported. And they're going to support that through those details that you're going to see. Let's look at an example. So the title of this passage reads, Federal Workers Deserve Respect. So right off the bat, reading that title, I know that this author is going to share something about federal workers. And I know that it's going to be in a positive light because it says deserves respect. So that means this author obviously likes federal workers. So let's read the rest of the passage to figure it out. So it reads, the vast majority of federal workers hold white-collar, professional, administrative, and technical jobs and aren't just college dropouts archiving triplicates of your tax return. Okay, so right there, I'm already getting a feeling of this author wants to make sure you understand that, hey, these federal workers, that they are professionals and that they're not just college dropouts. So obviously somebody had a negative point of view about federal workers, that they're just college dropouts. And already at this point, I get a feeling like this author is upset that people made this claim. So let's keep reading on to see what they have to say. So it says approximately 20% of federal workers have a master's degree, professional degree, or doctorate versus 13% in the private sector. So now I'm getting a comparison of the federal worker versus the worker who's in the private sector. And it goes on to read 51% of federal employees have at least a college degree compared with 35% in the private sector. So we have a lot of comparison going on right here, and it has to do with college degrees. The next paragraph reads, remarkably, okay, so when we were talking about word choice, folks, this word remarkably means in a way that is worthy of attention. So once again, when I was talking about pay attention to word choice, this use of this word just now definitely lets me know, okay, this author really believes that we need to give more respect to federal workers. But let's keep reading. So remarkably, more than 50 current or former federal employees have received Nobel Prizes. And that's a big deal, you guys. For those of you who are like, I don't know what a Nobel Prize is, I want you to Google it. It's a big deal. Their contributions have included the eradication of polio, the mapping of the human genome, and the harnessing of atomic energy. Federal employees protect our food and drug supplies, manage airline traffic, foil terrorist attacks, care for our wounded veterans, and make sure the elderly and those with disabilities get their Medicare and Social Security benefits. This is hardly paper pushing. So I want to pay attention to that as well because the author is ending this passage, or this short passage, I should say, by saying it's hardly paper pushing. And that to me is letting me know that goes up to this whole college dropout remark that they made in the beginning, where somebody said something and called federal workers college dropouts, that they were paper pushers. And this author comes in and it is like, no, let me give you a comparison of federal versus private sector when it comes to colleges. Let me list a whole bunch of accomplishments that federal workers have made in jobs that they're doing now, which is hardly paper pushing because these are important things to do. Making sure the elderly and those with disabilities get Medicare, really important, folks. Manage airline traffic, really important, folks. Foil terrorist attacks, I'm going to say that's really important, folks. After reading this passage, I know this author thinks highly of federal workers. So let's go ahead and jump into the questions that we have. So we have two questions that we want to make sure we answer. So it says, what is the author's point of view about federal workers? Well, we know it's a positive point of view. It's not a negative point of view. So if there's an answer choice that says that something negative about them, we know that's not going to be our answer choice. So A reads, they are educated, highly skilled, and do important jobs. And if you're like, lady, you know that's the answer, I know it's the answer. How could it not be? Because if we come back up here, folks, what did we read at the top? The comparison, right? And the comparison was about college degrees. And the author listed all of these stats where it's like, hey, federal workers have more college degrees. So we know that the educated part of answer A is correct. Highly skilled and do important jobs. Absolutely. You need to be highly skilled to get the eradication of polio. Polio is a disease, an old-time disease. We have immunization shots that you get as a kid so you don't get polio, but it affects like your ability to walk. that you need to be skilled for. So we know that the highly skilled portion that matches and do important works. Well, they listed a whole bunch of these jobs down here towards the bottom of the passage. So yeah, folks, I like A, and correct when you said A is the answer, because it is. Look at the other answer choices though. Let's see if A wasn't, well, if the answer choice wasn't A, we would need to make sure we read the other answer choices. So B reads, many are better than private sector workers. This is maybe an opinion the author has, but they didn't come out and say it in the passage. It's not something that we want to say, well, it's their point of view. Like it might be their point of view, but might is not good enough to get it as an answer. So I'm going to say no to B. C reads, they do jobs that other people cannot do. Nowhere in what we read was the author saying that other people cannot do these jobs. They were just saying, hey, look at what they're doing and what they've done. They've done a lot. So they're not just paper pushers. But we didn't read anything with the author saying that other people cannot do that job. And D reads, some federal workers are more than paper pushers. So that's an opinion. And we saw that with the last line that I underlined. This is hardly paper pushing. But what I don't like is the fact that this word, some, is used and are more than paper pushers. So when the sentence reads are more than paper pushers, that means whoever wrote it believes that federal workers are paper pushers, but some of them are not paper pushers. And that's just not really in line with how this passage was written. So I'm going to say no to D. And like we already knew, once we read it, A is the author's point of view about federal workers. Let's move on to number 2. How do examples of federal employees' contributions advance the author's point of view? So we saw all these examples down here, right? They protect our food, the drugs, the wounded veterans. We read all those examples. Let's read our answer choices. So A reads, the examples are surprising and make the reader question the contributions. Not really. I'll leave it on the back burner though. B, the examples add humor and irony to the passage. When we were reading those, did you want to laugh? No. B is out the window. C, the examples create an emotional response and make the reader sympathetic. Okay, I kind of like that one. Let's keep that one too. D, the examples show how federal workers are like private sector workers. No, that is not at all why this author shared those examples. They were sharing those examples to actually show how the federal workers are unlike that private sector worker. So let's go back to A. The examples are surprising and make the reader question the contributions. So are you questioning the contributions that they've made all because they were listed? No, because some of you, although you might be surprised that the eradication of polio was because of a federal worker, it's not going to make you question that contribution. So I'm going to say A is probably not it, but let's go to C and let's see what C has to say. So C reads, the examples create an emotional response and make the reader sympathetic. Sympathetic means that you can relate to the other person. And so we also see is an emotional response. Okay, well, when you come through and you say all of these examples, like federal employees protect our food and drug supplies, they manage airline traffic, they foil terrorist attacks. All of this is trying to get an emotion from you because these are all really important things, folks. These are things that if there wasn't somebody taking care of it, all of these people would be stuck. They would be stranded. They wouldn't have access to the food and drug supplies. They wouldn't, get the services that they need. So when we come back down here with answering number 2, how do examples of federal employees' contributions advance the author's point of view? We're going to say C, because the author wants us to think highly of federal workers. And so they're going to pull on our emotional response and make us sympathetic towards these federal workers. Thanks for watching the video, folks. Make sure that you are studying and you are practicing the skills that you are learning, because it's one thing to learn a skill, folks. It's another thing to apply it to a passage, to a problem that you will see on the exam. You know what you're doing, folks. Keep your head up. You've got this. And for those of you that have stuck through all the way to this point, I want to let you know about the beauty of using Google to find tools to help you study. So in the last video that we had this as a hidden track. And so I guess technically this is a hidden track as well. So what I did is I came over to Google and I wrote writer's tone and point of view in the search. And then search gave me a whole bunch of different things. It even gave me an overview right up here. But the important part that I want to point out to you folks is if you come all the way to the right up here, click on the downward arrow and come to books. You've heard me talk about Kaplan's GED study guide. I highly suggest you pick it up, folks. They give great lessons. They give you a lot of different problems to practice these skills that you're using. There are practice tests as well. So you want to make sure you grab a book if you can. If you can't, though, when you come over to the books, and I'm going to come down here because the second one is going to be where they'll have that lesson about what we just talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this. And this is basically a preview. And so Kaplan allows Google to share a preview of the study guide. And this is the lesson that we just basically had with writer's tone and point of view. The nice thing though, folks, like I said, this is why I want you to go and purchase the actual study guide, is that there are passages and question, folks. So this passage right here is going to talk about something, and if we go up here, talking back to the tube. So obviously this is about a television topic about the TV. And so then we come over here and you see all of these different questions that are in line with what you just learned, which was about writer's tone and point of view. So make sure, folks, that you reach out on Google, you search to see, well, what do they have for me free? And then go ahead, purchase the study guide book. If you're like, where would I buy the Kaplan study guide book? You can buy it on Amazon. I'm pretty sure I've seen it in Walmart as well too. Just make sure you buy it new and not used, because you don't want someone to have already gone through and answered these questions for you.